Termites, night 5. How are we all feeling? Huh? I know a lot of the schools are closing back down. That means those children of yours are coming back home. Columbia, Missouri, back. Detroit, I read it, back. So I feel terrible for everybody who's completely discombobulated because of all that. And on your behalf, you probably can't, I will day drink for you. How about this? Some cinnamon-flavored Stonebreaker whiskey. We're from Kansas City. Go Chiefs. I feel like a hack when I say go Chiefs because I'm from St. Louis. But we don't have a team in St. Louis anymore, so I will yield to the AFC, and I will take the Chiefs because there are Kansas City. Half of Kansas City is in Kansas. Half is in Missouri. They are on the Missouri side. No matter how many Kansas people want to say they're not, they are. They technically belong to the state of Missouri. So go Chiefs. And this is delicious. If you're ever in Kansas City, get some of this. It's like Fireball with a kick and not quite as sweet. Sometimes the Fireball, I like it, but a little too sweet sometimes. It's kind of like a hot candy dart in your eye. Does that make sense? Not this. This has got kick, but it's less sugary, which is why I prefer it. All right, termites. Who's hanging up Christmas stuff? Anybody yet? I am, because I have all the time in the goddamn world. This place is going to look like a mall in the 90s when I'm done. I'm going to outdo my brother, and that is not easy. But he uses the inflatables. I don't like them because I think in the daytime, they look like they just broke and they're laying on your lawn. I'm not a fan. But I have a deer this year. I got it at Lowe's, and it's a buck, and its head goes. And I actually have a lot of deer in the woods around me. And last year they attacked my buck, and I know it was them because I have a camera. Now they didn't get any trouble for that, but this year maybe I will do something to scare the shit out of them. I think it's funny. They think it's real. That's a compliment to Lowe's. Whoever built it, compliment. Chapter 3 on becoming a woman. This ought to be something. I learned early on that becoming a woman could be scary business, especially if you don't know nothing about it. Well, I can't. One day, when I was almost 13, I started cramping in my stomach, and I didn't know why. I remember thinking I had plenty to eat that day, so I couldn't be having hunger pangs. I don't know. I grew up saying pains. Pangs. P-A-N-G-S. Hunger pangs. Pang. You got a pang? I'm a panging. I'm so hungry, I'm a panging. That's what I'm going to start saying now. I got to get going because I'm so hungry, I'm panging. No one will know what the fuck I'm talking about. And believe me, poor people know what hunger feels like. Though I felt something wet, and for a minute I was afraid I'd go into the bathroom in my own pants. Well, I think at 13 you'd probably know if you did that, unless you have some sort of incontinence issue. When I looked down, to my horror, I saw blood between my legs. Lord, I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was sick, maybe even bleeding to death. Still, something kept me from running to my parents like I usually do when I was afraid. Something inside me said this was some sort of shameful thing. I couldn't even tell my own mama or daddy. So I ran to the creek and sat down, hoping the water would wash this awful thing off me right there. Mama never told me nothing about this. It wasn't a topic of general conversation in the holler, even between a girl and her mother. None of my girlfriends ever mentioned it. So for the next couple of months, I tried to hide it. I'd sit for hours in the creek to keep clean. See, I don't know that I could sit in the creek that long. I mean, it's a creek. You know what's on the bank? Cottonmouths, copperheads. I'd have to be really in the middle of the creek. Can't tell you how afraid I was. It was just awful. I just knew I was dying from some horrible thing I didn't understand. Then one day I was washing fruit jars in a tub of hot water. My mommy was canning turnip greens. I'd been cramping something awful and finally fainted. Loretta, are you having your monthly? Am I what? Are you bleeding down there? I hung my head. Oh, it's time. Time for what? It's time for you got your monthly, she said matter-of-factly. Then she explained it all. The day I left home, the only thing I knew about sex was what boys stood up to pee and girls sat down because what was made down there was different. One good thing that came with them monthlies was Mama let me off the hook when it came to working. You don't need the help when you're having cramps. She put me to bed, tore strips of flour sacks to put in my panties. Oh, Lord. And gave me an aspirin. I'm surprised they even had aspirin. My younger sister, Peggy Sue, once reminded me that I told her I said I wasn't going to be like Mommy, not explaining things. She said I told her when I was 12 all about it, but she said I didn't tell her where she'd be bleeding from or what it meant, just that I'd be bleeding. Well, that is a kind of an alarming notice. At some age, you're just going to start bleeding, and it's going to be really fucked up. Thank you. I made the same mistake with my oldest daughter, Betty. I left out the most important parts. Both girls thought, laughing about this to this day. They was just kids, and they probably wondered if they'd bleed from their gums or their feet or whatever or wherever. So when them girls began to flow down there, they was as frightened as if it'd been when it first happened to me. The only way I was different than my mama was that the whole minute I realized what going on, I did try to explain the story. I don't think being from Butcher Holler had much to do with Mommy's reluctance to talk about such things. Well, Mommy's daddy doesn't even talk. Remember that. He just grunts. And then once every 10 years, he says something horribly insulting. So maybe Mommy ain't a big talker either. I fear that back in them days, that conversation was one a lot of them girls in New York City or San Francisco didn't have with their mommies either. And knowing how not knowing feels made me want to explain it as much as I could to my own children. This includes everything from sex education to the music business to raising goats, too. I'm sure that sometimes my children wished I hadn't explained so much. But once I got the hang of explaining, I couldn't stop myself. That's exactly right. Right after I started having a period, Mommy and Daddy decided I should start sleeping in a little bed in their room instead of with the rest of the kids. Daddy said I was too big to be sleeping with my brothers. It never occurred to me that he and Mommy were thinking about the fact I was becoming a woman, maybe growing into pretty. Later on, I find out that married people have sex. I wonder how Mommy and Daddy ever had any once I moved in. I don't know when they was personal. Must have been after I went to sleep. They had a feather bed and it didn't make much noise, so maybe I just didn't wake up. If somebody had told me that I'd gone from sleeping in my parents' room, from being a grade school student and a classroom janitor to being a married woman, I'd have told them they was as crazy as Mommy's not right in the head uncle. And that's how he will be defined at Thanksgiving. Is our not right in the head uncle coming? Yes or no? I see no point in talking too much about me courting do. I put all that in my first book. It was in the movie, but I'll fill you in case you missed the story the first time. I think some people have the wrong ideas about hill people. Well, yes and no. That's what I'd say about that. Some think hillbillies all get married young. Others believe everybody's marrying their own cousin. I don't necessarily believe that. I'm not saying it hasn't happened more than once. But no, not everybody is doing that. Well, people in Butcher Holler, and that includes my parents, didn't think no 13-year-old should be getting married. Good for them. A lot of my cousins were in their 20s before they got married. When Duke came home from the Army in 1948, he didn't seem 22 years old to me, and he looked like some sort of tour soldier in his uniform. Being raised in such an isolated place, I didn't have much of an idea of what you might call expectations. Expectations of going to school beyond that little one-room classroom, getting a job outside of the coal mines, having a life anything different from what I'd seen around me. I thought you lived at home till you got married and then you lived with your husband. That's all I ever thought about marriage. Age never seemed to come into it. 15, 13, 20, 22. If you fell in love with someone, you married them. What was love? Well, I guess they've been asking that question forever. It's just that simple. You love them, marry them. 13, 15, don't matter. What the hell's the difference? We're not leaving the holler. We're going to work at the coal mine now and stay in the holler. At 13, I'd never dated no boy, and I'd never sparked either. Sparking, remember that? I believed I was ugly. Too ugly to ever get a husband, and maybe even too ugly to even get a boyfriend. Lots of folks know that our school had one night a social one night, and pies was auctioned off to raise some money. Loretta Lynn bought mine, and that's how we first got together. I think that was in the movie, wasn't it? The pie contest was kind of a beauty contest. I never dreamed anyone would pay more than a nickel for my face, even if it came with a pie. So when Dude pulled out a $5 bill and made me the beauty contest winner, he became my hero. Well, he's way better than that Indian grandpa telling you you're ugly. This guy's a winner already. His Jeep was the first car I'd ever seen. And what a great car to see first, a Jeep. How fun is that? Dew is just hit, he's batting 2 for 2. But I didn't like the idea of riding around in it, never wanting to get in no vehicle that wasn't, oh wow, never wanted to get in no vehicle that wasn't pulled by an animal. I was already a little crazy about Dew, but I made him walk me home that night. All of us carrying pine torches. I'm gonna have to Google that. When we got home, he gave me my first kiss. After that, I was more than a little crazy about him. I went in the house singing. Who was that? Who was that out there? Mommy asked. Loretta Lynn, I answered, feeling like my heart was still in my throat. I was already thinking I might be in love with him. She and Daddy had a fit. They didn't like the notion of me seeing Dude one bit, but that didn't stop me. I'd have sneaked around to be with him and did a time or two. There wasn't anything they could do or say. Once, Daddy even whipped me, and that was out of the few times he ever raised a hand. They knew a lot about Dude's family. They knew there was a lot of hard drinkers among the Lyns, and they'd seen Dude's daddy, Red Lynn, leave his wife and children over and over. Well, that does mean he came back, unless there were wives, but it says wife. They divorced, here we go, they divorced and remarried 4 times. Well, that's when you just can't find anybody else to date in the holler. Look, I hate your guts, I'm leaving. Well, shit, there's nobody else here. All right, you're all right. That's how that probably went down. Red would just go off and get drunk and drop out of sight for a couple years. At one point, the law even told Dude's folks they couldn't get married no more. What? I guess they'd used up their times at bat. It wasn't the kind of family life my parents wanted for me. Now, see, I don't disagree with the law here. This is my thing. People always say divorce is the problem in this country. No. Marriage licenses are the problem. That's the problem because they're like, what, $10? That doesn't make somebody stop and think. Not even $500 would. What if a marriage license was like a lot, like as much as the ring? Then you'd really think about it harder. Right? And I think if you get married 3 times, well, 4, let's say, and it doesn't work, then the next time you go to get another marriage license, those ladies that work there should go, yeah, no. You clearly aren't good at this and you can't make good decisions for yourself. So you're going to have to take some classes and then we're going to talk to you and we'll think about it. That would save them so much money. It's for the good of the people. Dew and I had 3 or 4 dates next month. Dew went to work in the mines, and once he had a paycheck in his hand, he asked me to marry him. I don't know if I wanted to get married, but I didn't want Dew to get away either. Looking back on it, I wonder if I didn't fall in love so hard because no other boy had paid attention to me. Maybe. And Indian grandpa's telling her she's ugly. It's not good. Dew made me feel beautiful for the first time in my life. Even Lee Dollarhide's compliments hadn't been able to make me feel so pretty. Sometimes I just think people forget how intense a young girl's emotions is. Girls can fall hard during their early teens when love is still something mysterious and not judged by real-life experiences. Now, this didn't happen to Tanya Tucker because Tanya's already out working on the road at this age. She's 13. She's already got gigs, already sang Delta Dawn. Loretta's still in the holler. I believe I loved Doolittle more at that time than any other. As our married life went on, my feelings changed. I loved Dew until the day he died, but while I ended up turning a blind eye to a lot of his ways over the years, that early kiss was a distant memory. There must be a song about that, right? I told Dew I'd have to ask Mommy and Daddy for their permission to marry. He'd have to ask Mommy and Daddy for their permission to marry me, and in them days, a man was supposed to ask a girl for her daddy's hand. Dew couldn't get a straight answer from Mommy or Daddy when he approached them separately, so we walked right into the bedroom when they was almost asleep to ask for my hand. The reason he did was because I told him he should try to get them together when they was bone tired. They didn't even get out of the bed. Daddy knew dude wouldn't have come into their bedroom unless I told him to. That meant Daddy knew I really wanted to marry this man. Daddy said I knew I had enough web in me. That's he's somebody's last name, or Mama's last name. To get what I wanted once I set my mind on it. And if he had told dude no, I might have waited a whole nother week before I made dude ask again. Or I might have run off. I don't know. Here's something else I didn't know. I wasn't Dude's first choice. Well, that's not nice. Dude went off to the army. When Dude went off to the army, he had a girl waiting on him. When he came back, she'd married somebody else. So he went to the pie supper and found me on the rebound. Well, better found than never, I guess, right? Wow. From the beginning, Dude was always calling me a stupid hillbilly, and in many ways, I was just that. Okay, but there's no reason to call somebody that. You could just point out, hey, there's some things in the hills that y'all don't know about. And maybe the hillbilly could say, yeah, well, I know shit you don't know. You ever eaten a chicken's head? You ever go sparking? You ever get gone? Just different. Of course, there's a big difference between being stupid and being ignorant. Amen, sister. And when you ain't been around enough to know what's what. And here's what I mean by ignorant. This ought to be good. On the way to the courthouse where we got married, I had to go to the bathroom. Doolittle took me to the bus station, which had an only indoor toilet in Butcher Holler. I'd never been to the bus station, so I'd never used or even seen an indoor toilet. I sat down, and it started flushing by itself. Water began, well, that is quite advanced for back then. An automatic flushing toilet back in, what is this, the 40s, the 50s? That seems weird. Water began to swirl and flush. I thought the toilet was a machine that was going to swallow me. I jumped off the seat, pulled up my panties, and ran back to Deuce like a scared rabbit. When I told him what happened, he'd like to have a fit. God damn it, woman, you're the most stupid thing I ever seen. Then he told me about indoor toilets and flushing. Me and Dude waited at the courthouse from 8 o'clock until 11:30 in the morning for Daddy to come to the wedding. Mama couldn't come because she had to stay with the other kids. Hours seemed like days when you're waiting. I got afraid Daddy had backed out and he wouldn't give me away. Directly he came along, but he just stood inside the door of the courthouse and never stepped inside. He could hear what was going on. When I saw that scene in Coal Miner's Daughter, I choked up. Like I said, Levon Helm was so much like Daddy, he brought a lump to my throat. I got married but didn't have no ring. That was bought 14 years later on the installment plan. It cost $37. The justice of the peace said, I now pronounce you man and wife. Daddy turned his back and walked right out the door. He never spoke a word after saying in a low voice, I do, when he gave me away, and I didn't see him for days. His heart was broken. I saw my daddy walking away in the hard rain that fell all day, and I remember my mommy's words that morning when she saw him. It was raining so hard. She said, Loretta, if you get married in this rain, you'll shed every tear. You'll shed every tear that it rains. And I have. Well, that's probably not a very nice thing to say. I didn't know whether to be happy because I had me a husband or hurt because I knew I'd hurt. My daddy was so disappointed. That was such painful confusion. But when you're a 13-year-old bride, oh my God, there are many confusing times. For me, they were just the beginning. Do sign the marriage license O.V. Lynn Jr. Who's that? I said. That's my name, he said. I thought his name was Doolittle, but as I said earlier, most folks called him Do. Turned out to be Oliver Loretta Lynn Jr. I actually married a man whose real name I didn't even know until 10 minutes after we was man and wife. Well, you know what? Fuck it. Start out blind. Then you got a lot to learn. You'll never get bored. People who date forever and know everything about each other, then they get married and you already know everything and there's really nothing more interesting to learn. If you start here, I don't even know your name. You at least added 5 more years of interesting shit onto your marriage because you don't even know this person is a total stranger. Might as well be a prearranged marriage. When I saw Coal Miner's Daughter, it embarrassed the tar out of me when it showed Drew trying to make love to me on our wedding night. It's still embarrassing for me to talk about such things. I was a guest on a radio show not long after my autobiography came out. The interview had advertised that I'd be there, and he had some letters about the visit. He'd said most of the mail he received was to ask about the wedding night. I don't know why folks had so much interest in other people's wedding nights. Loretta, the radio interview, said, let's talk about your wedding night. Let's don't, I said. Let's talk about yours. That's a good comeback. Throw it back on them. No, let's talk about yours. Yours. I don't understand, the man said. You wrote about it in your book. Well, writing about it in a book and talking about it out loud is two different things. The show host told me later he was taken off guard and he started spinning records and never asked me another question. Well, I'll tell the story here again and correct something about it. Before we went to bed, Dude told me to put on a flannel nightgown that his mother bought for me that day. I did, over my clothes. Ha ha! I'll trick you, Oliver Vanetta. Don't even know your goddamn name. That's something you wouldn't forget either. She was probably 80 going, I didn't even know your name. Women don't forget things like that. So I put it on. Dude sent me to the back of the bathroom to take off my clothes. I came back wearing a nightgown, a slip, and my panties. He sent me back to remove the slip, got annoyed, and tore the panties off. I hated it, even though Dude told me this is marriage folks, that's what married folks done. All I knew is this man I loved thought was on top of me doing things I didn't like. I especially didn't like the part about having to spread my legs. The movie showed me hollering while we had sex, but we didn't have no sex that night. I just couldn't do it, and Dude didn't force me. In fact, it took a week before we actually did. Dude finally went to sleep that first night, and I laid there and cried. It was 3 weeks before I could face anyone. I wasn't going to go around people who knew what we'd done or tried to do inside that there motel. Dude said everybody knew anyhow. Well, this is starting out good. Get married at 13. I don't even know your real name. Daddy's mad. Mama's telling you you're going to be as sad as the rain forever. All this 13. And now, if you're 13, you're just mad because you can't be on TikTok. Right? My sister saw the movie Social Dilemma, and she's completely taken phones away. And my nieces, the twins, are 12, and they're like, oh, she's so overreacting. I kind of agree. But that's why I'm the fun aunt. Because I would say, you just TikTok your asses off. I don't care. Just don't be too sexual because you're too young. Just look at, there's a lot of funny cat things on TikTok. I like it when the cats talk. My owner today was very angry. There's a voice, it's like a robot voice. I don't know which account that is. And then there's one with foxes. Anywho, termites. It's getting good, isn't it? Well, so much we're learning about the howler. Chicken head, sparking. Poke. I still have to look that up. Pokey. I know what tuna pokey is. I don't know what poke is from a holler. I'm going to find out. I'm going to get back to you on that. Pokey. Must be like the dandelion things. All right, termites. Are you cozy? Do you feel it? You feel winter coming? Winter is coming. Me too. I'm kind of excited. All right. Get cozy. It's cozy. Pull your blanket up. You're a worthy termite. You're a cherished termite by your whole termite community, including me and the grand termite who still will be here, I promise. And he likes to do this, so we'll let him be in it. We don't really like guests too much, but since he's the grand termite, I have to let him. All right, that's it. Get yourself some cinnamon whiskey. That's it. Night-night, termites.